In the first episode of our boundary series, we explored where boundaries might be missing in our lives and how to recognize those gaps. In the second episode, we discussed the different types of boundaries we experience in both our personal and professional lives. Today, we're diving into the how of it all, how to create boundaries at work that work for us. Whether at school or at home, the 4C's step method, create, communicate, commit, and check in, offers a helpful framework for establishing and maintaining those boundaries. Let's dive into the well. Welcome to the Actionable podcast, a show created for, by, and with teachers. I'm Alex.
And I'm Chelsea. With over 30 years of combined teaching experience, our goal is to share insights and connect with fellow educators on how to thrive both personally and professionally.
Join us as we dive deep into the well of information, filled with meaningful discussions, practical tips, and ideas that go way beyond the classroom walls. Let's be well
and do well together.
So today we're diving into boundaries and what they look like and how to set them up both at school and at home. This is the third episode in our series, and we're going to break it down into 4 simple steps. Now, we've already said it once, but we're going to say it again. Create, communicate, commit, and check in.
Yes, these 4 C's are essential for crafting boundaries that stick. So we're going to look into how to apply them both in the classroom and at home. I know that they've been life-changing for me.
Absolutely. And I think that on a regular basis, we are really doing this. And what we're doing today is we're deconstructing it so that we're able to name it, so that the areas where we're not as strong, we can identify it and maybe switch it up and change it up. And one is sticking out to me right now, like a sore thumb, as a boundary that is lacking. Boundaries around time and work. As a teacher, there is inevitably going to be things that are done outside of the school day. It is extremely hard to get everything done that you want to get done. But over the last 10 years, the amount of access that I can have to work and that work can, in theory, have to me has increased tenfold. There are things about it that are really cool. And we saw that during COVID. We got to be really creative and work from afar. And we learned all these different ways of using devices. And it can make life easier. But what I have found more so is that expectation creep increases. Now, whether that expectation is something I am putting on myself or whether it's external to me or perhaps a mix, which is what I would suggest, that's outweighed the benefit of, being able to use technology. Woo, it's so exciting, right? So I'm identifying right now in my career that is an area where I need to create and maintain better boundaries. And I really have to watch myself, because as much as people are guilty of breaching a boundary with me with regards to work time, I am also equally as guilty of doing so. And so you really have to work hard. It's a daily maintenance to maintain those boundaries. If you let them loose, Chelsea, it becomes such an extension of your school day. As a teacher, I know for me, I ruminate about things that have happened during the day that I think I could have handled better. And I'm thinking about that. And that's a form of work, right? A form of something that is creeping into your personal life, but it's just expanded so much. And if I can kind of pull back on that, I think that's a really positive move. And it helps me at home and at school to have those boundaries set.
Yeah. And that's kind of what we talked about with our mind mosquitoes, right? How to eliminate those mind mosquitoes and actually address them at a time that works for you. And that's not at home when you want to be present with your family or be present in your hobbies or your passions. So first, create that boundary and then communicate that boundary. So we're kind of jumping into step 2 here. Communicate that boundary with the people around you or with yourself if you need to, because you have to set boundaries with yourself as well.
Chelsea, as you're explaining this to me, 2 things are really sticking out. And I just want to address them really quickly. The first one is making sure that you communicate the boundaries well in advance, so that people have a chance to adjust what they're thinking or what they're doing or what they're envisioning It's almost like a preempt, and then the way that you do it, right? Like if I'm setting a boundary and it's in the moment where I feel intense and I have something else that's more important in that moment to take care of, it can come off, you know, not it can come off cranky in a way that's not going to get results. And so a Mike Traz quote is coming to mind right now, and that is calm and confident. So to express it, to communicate your boundaries, you're not um, asking a lot of the time, you're telling, and it's calm and confident. And because you have to remember that as an individual, you have a right to ask for what you need in a moment, right? And so I think the timing and the manner that we communicate these things are really clear. And I'm going to flip this, of course, to work, right?
Yes.
At work, when we need to create boundaries with ourselves, with our students, with our colleagues, with our administrative team, whatever it may be, you have to advocate for what you are and for what you are not capable of doing. And you do so in a calm and confident manner. And timing is very important, right? Because sometimes, once again, I'm going to say it, if you're doing it last minute, sometimes passion or frustration creeps into your expressive voice. So if you feel like you are in control of the situation, you express yourself in a better way. Well, that's just been my lived experience thus far. What do you think?
I keep going back to identifying where the boundaries are missing because I think that that's how you start preparing to create and then communicate that boundary. And this just makes me think of the whole digital communication thing. I make sure to tell students right away at the beginning of the year, I am not going to be able to answer your email outside of these hours. I tell my students that in a calm, confident manner, and they're very, very good at respecting that boundary, I find. So, and all it took was a little bit of communication.
Well, you're talking about our next topic, which is committing to the boundaries. Had you broken your own boundaries, which by the way is tempting from time to time, either you get an email and you're
Yes.
dying to respond in the moment, or there's something you need to send out. You made a mistake during the day and it's mind mosquitoing you like bzz so much, and you need to send out an email to fix it. Are you committing to your own boundaries? It sounds to me like you are within your classroom setting. And when you commit to your decision, it's like that quote, I say what I mean and I mean what I say. And it creates a culture for the classroom. So when we talk about committing to boundaries and we're talking about, really sticking to our decisions, it sparked a memory of something that Barbara Coloroso wrote about. And it was 3 different types of parenting. One was the jellyfish, and that was loosey goosey, no spine, no sticking to anything. One was the brick wall, and you were so married to your decision that you never ever veered in any way at all whatsoever. The third one was the backbone, where you have a level of flexibility that exists, but you're not, stonewalling and a no is a no, no matter what, and you're not waffling back and forth. And I think we're talking, when we talk about boundaries, is having that backbone. And when you have that backbone, it really shows kids what you value the most. There's a level of consistency, and it helps for students and family members at home to feel secure because they know what is to be expected. There's other pieces of that, obviously. I very much simplified that explanation.
I think definitely there is. And I think this takes some experimentation. I think it's a really good thing to actually learn about as a parent. I hadn't heard of this before. I'm loving it. I'm going to have to read about this now because I think we can all fluctuate, between the three. And then we really need to find that happy medium, that backbone. And you learn by making mistakes. I know I've learned by making mistakes with just letting the boundaries go. You put it in place, but then it becomes very difficult, or there is a lot of pushback, and then you just let it go, and then you regret that, and then you want to put it back in place again. And I think, though, that the biggest indicator that your boundaries are working is, of course, that feeling you get when you see them working. You know how we talked about feeling guilt in setting boundaries initially? When you sort of push that aside and you let that guilt go, and then you put the boundary in place and you see amazing results, that can really start a snowball of creating more and more boundaries that are really working for you and the students around you, your family. And once you start seeing the improvements in your life, could be professionally, could be personally, that guilt doesn't really come back again when you want to create the next boundary. And you realize how good it is for the other person or people that you set that boundary with or for. It is amazing, and especially in parenting. Think about bedtime. I'm sorry, I know I always bring up the bedtime boundary situation, but you're really helping foster independence in people and children when you create those types of boundaries where people aren't always needing you so much. Does that make sense?
It does. And you've said so many things that I just need to address. And one of them is you just said with or for. So it is a collaborative, it's together, and that's really amazing. And for, it is not just about you. I know a lot of my examples are all about selfishly needing more time to myself and chilling and recovering from the week, but it is for everyone. It is for the good
Yes.
of the family. If you for several reasons. One is you're modeling a behavior that they can learn and take forward in their own life, and that will be good for the people in your life. And also because if you're never setting boundaries and you're being torn in your quote unquote million directions all the time and never doing the self-care, it will be really darn hard to be the best for yourself and for everyone else in your family and yourself, of course, and at school. So, I mean, it's just the gift that keeps on giving if you learn to do it and you commit to it. And the other thing that you mentioned was something along the lines of setting a boundary and then not sticking to it or not seeing it as effective. So I just want to maybe move us into the next big idea, which is to check in and adjust. I know for me personally, when I haven't gone into things calm and confident, having identified, where my boundaries were lacking and I just did it off the cuff, things come out of my mouth that are unrealistic. They are not well thought
Yeah.
out. They are unfair to the people around me or to me. And so, if you create a boundary, even one that you've thought out, and you're not married to that boundary, you can revisit it and adjust based on your needs and perhaps the needs of the people around you, depending on what type of boundary it is. And you can shift that boundary and change that boundary. I mean, if you do that every time, I would consider that's kind of jellyfish, very waffly. However, it's okay to do that, like it's like life is a living document. And so you're constantly looking backwards and forwards and adjusting with needs. Life changes, situations change, you know. I know for me, I just think about myself when kind of everything's fallen apart in life and someone is really sick and you're dropping everything to take care of that. You have to let go of some things and be okay with that, and you have to adjust. And it's this snapshot in time where you almost put regular life on hold, and if you are too married to regular life, you see it as so much worse. But if you're able to look at it as a snapshot in time where things are really messy and you are going to reset once you get back to normal, you're almost giving yourself that temporary position to kind of have a very messy moment. Do you kind of get what I'm getting at? Because I'm thinking boundaried life is can be very routine and it's predictable and lovely, but sometimes life is not predictable and lovely. And when it gets messy, sometimes your boundaries have to melt away for a little bit of time.
Yeah. Boundaries depend on the people that you are working with, the people who are around you. So it is just extremely malleable.
All right. Well, here's something that happened to me the other day with regard to boundary setting. I was asked to do some work and I was happy to do the work. I was happy to help out, but I have a certain skill set, and that was the work I was comfortable doing. And it's not that I wasn't wanting to take a chance, but I wasn't willing to take on the extension of that work. So I was willing to take on some base, and then beyond that, my communication was something along the lines of, I'm really good at doing this, this, and this. This is what I have to offer. But beyond that, you're going to have to find someone else to A, B, C, and D. And that boundary that I put up and that communication that I, made took about 80% of my stress off of me, because I knew that I was going to contribute in the best way that I knew how, but that it wasn't going to be a lingering, ongoing thing that would create more stress over time. And I mean, that was really cryptic, what I just said. Um, but that has only come with confidence that I can do that now. So that's been years of just building and knowing that, I'm willing to help. I want to help, and this is where I'm willing to help. But to communicate that to someone else, it was really empowering. And then on the other end, the person was absolutely amazing as a response, and so that just felt really, really good. So that's the best boundary that I've set up in the past month.
And that's funny that you say that, because just recently I opened up a fortune cookie that said something along the lines of, be careful what you promise. You might not be able to deliver what you promise, or something like that. So it really made me reflect on, my priorities and the things I can and cannot take on, and where I need to put boundaries in place. So that's interesting that you say that. So you really had to think about, what can I take on here and what can't I take on here? But the other part is the reaction that you got from the person. Sometimes you're not always going to get that positive reaction. It would be nice, but we do have to remember that the reaction of the other person is something that they have to deal with.
Well, Chelsea, here's a little share for our listeners. And I don't know if you really want me saying this out loud, but when we started talking about the podcast, of course, we did a ton of research because we're teachers and we wanted to do everything right. And the best advice out there is to do a weekly podcast. And Chelsea and I, we really aspirationally wished and wanted to do a weekly podcast. But after, 16 takes on our first episode, quickly realized that we are teachers and we have, um, our own lives that we want to run, and that our eyes were bigger than our stomach. We needed to pare it down. And so that's why we made the decision together to go to a bi-weekly podcast. And we've reflected now over the past 2 years many, many times and said, thank God we didn't do a weekly podcast. There is no way we would have stuck to it at all. We have so much grace because we are very focused on our careers. And hey, teachers listening, you know how busy it is out there, right? So we are able to produce episodes, and we have time in our lives for if things go awry, and they do all the time. But being reasonable with yourself. If I had the magic wand and could do everything for everyone, and, I want to, I really do want to, but you don't end up doing everything well. There's our word, well, if you're doing too many things. So
Yeah. And that really makes me think of our episode on unlocking the power of teacher collaboration. Because, let's be real about this. I was the one who was like, we're going to do weekly episodes. And thankfully, you said, Chelsea, let's talk about this. Let's think about our schedules as teachers. Let's think about our families. And you got your fishing rod and reeled me in, which I am so grateful for now. Let's also acknowledge that that has happened a few more times since we've started in doing things involving the podcast, where my eyes are much bigger than my stomach. And thank God I have you here to say, let's look at some boundaries here. And so thank goodness, because this would have all imploded if we had done it my way. So thank goodness for collaboration when it comes to boundaries.
yeah, and let me just make sure that all of our listeners know that you oftentimes have thrown out the lure and grabbed me hook line and in the cheek and pulled me back from edges all the time too. So the great thing about collaboration is you're getting the best of two minds and coming to the best possible decision. And of course, now I have to do something corny and I have to talk about the well and how we're going to throw the fishing rod into the well and see if maybe we can start to pull up some takeaways from this episode on boundaries, on how to create them, communicate them, commit, and check in on them. What do you think, Chels?
I think that's a great idea. So let me start us off with number 1, create the boundaries. Identify areas lacking limits and establish clear boundaries to protect your time and your energy.
2, communicate clearly. Articulate your boundaries to ensure everyone understands your limits and their importance.
3, commit to those boundaries. Stay firm and confident in maintaining your boundaries to foster respect and understanding from others.
And 4, check in and adjust. Regularly evaluate and adjust your boundaries as needed to accommodate changing circumstances. Life happens. Thanks for listening to the Eduwell podcast. If you enjoyed today's episode, please share it with a friend, subscribe, and leave a positive review. It helps others to find us.
Follow us on Instagram and Pinterest to help spread the word. For more inspiration, tips, and book recommendations, just head to the show notes and join the Eduwell newsletter today. Until next time, be well
and do well.